Cloudcast Media. Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and so pleased to have back in one of my favorite guests, Hall Cunneen. She is the managing partner of Cunneen Booth LLP. We really can't talk about trusts and wills and estates and all that business enough. And as you've heard me say before, Dawn, you know it, this is your world. It amazes me when people think, I can just put it off, and they should never do that. How are you doing for one?
Doing great. Yes.
Good, very good to see you again. And business booming as always, I imagine.
It is. Sadly, we have a number of clients impacted by the Pacific Palisades fires and the things happening in our area, our community right now.
Yeah, I went to school at Palisades High, and so it's horrible. So, and my junior high got damaged too, Paul Revere Junior High. So
yes.
It's crazy on this. So imagine you're watching this on TV. You know they're from there. Did you get calls immediately?
We did, yes, because people were in crisis and they didn't know what to do or who to turn to. So they called right away and let us know that they were impacted. Let us know what their needs were, and it's just been a challenging time for so many people.
I can't imagine it. So I'm going to jump right into one of the details. Is certainly when you have a trust and estate plan, we'll get into some of the certainly the components of those. But for it to be enacted, you got to have the original, right? Everyone makes copies and has but you have to have the original to enact it. If I'm wrong, let me know. What happens if the original's at home and the house burns down?
That's been a big issue. We've had that come up with some of our clients in Pacific Palisades. For example, we had a client who was moving from a retiring attorney to our office. They had just gone to the retiring attorney and picked up their whole file. The gentleman who was retiring was of the generation that didn't keep electronic copies of everything. So the only copy of their entire trust was lost in the fire. And so there's a process in the probate court where you can go to a prove-up hearing, and if one of the people who created the trust is still living or some of the witnesses are living, we can prove up the terms of the trust. But this trust was created in 2009, and the woman's in her 90s. That's going to be quite a challenge to meet the burden of proof on a prove-up hearing for a document she literally has not looked at since 2009.
But if she had a copy of it, would that help? Or
it would. If you have a copy, it makes all the difference because then you have the terms of the trust.
That's
You're
right.
not going from memory.
Yeah.
So we're calling every financial advisor she's ever had, every CPA she's ever had to see if she gave someone a copy of the trust. So right now we're really encouraging all of our clients to digitize, have a digital copy of all of your estate planning documents, because if something happens, whether earthquake, fire, the parade of horribles, you will have a way to prove the terms of your trust.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And while I have a copy of my trust and all that business, it's in the same place where the original is. So that doesn't do too well if a Palisades fire hits Rancho Penasquita. So that's a good point. I'm going to go and spend time digitizing all of this, as I should have done a while ago. So talk about, I've been using your quote a lot, that, okay, if you don't put your, resources and all this stuff that you have in a trust, in an estate plan, and you pass away, it goes to probate. And in probate, your heirs are going to get significantly less than if they did if they were in an estate plan, correct?
They certainly will. And because the fees are set by statute, And it's also a very public proceeding. So anybody can go and pull the court records, see exactly your date of death balance on every credit card and all of your liabilities, all of your assets. And it takes a long time to get through the system now. Our courts are so impacted with
Right.
draconian budget cuts year over year. So it's very difficult to get your assets through the process where you once again have control of them.
Yeah, and I think, you were mentioning if you go through probate, and, obviously it depends on how much assets you have. It's different than somebody who owns 16 zillion properties somewhere versus, just sort of owns their house and has had money in savings and some stocks. But it's still going to cost you thousands of dollars versus go ahead and talk to a trusted attorney like yourself. And for whatever the number is, $2,500, whatever you charge, I mean, you're done. You've got that. And now your stuff is protected. Why? The math says, why wouldn't you do that?
Right. No, it's just there's no incentive to leave your estate, quite frankly, a mess and put your heirs in a position where they are struggling to meet obligations.
Well, that's the other thing you and I talked about is, there is a psychology of not wanting to talk about death. I don't get that because death is part of the life cycle, if I'm not mistaken. Not quite sure I'm going to live to 150. Not sure if I'll even want to live to 150. But that being said, why would you, as a parent or a grandparent or whatever, want to make it difficult on your kids? Aren't you supposed to, as a parent, I want to make my little kid's life easier. And one of the way to make it easier is to have everything laid out.
That's for sure. And we find that the estates that go the most smoothly when someone passes away is where we're actually even meeting with their children while they're alive, so there aren't any surprises.
Of course.
And if there are some things they don't understand in the estate plan, why did Susie get this and I get that? They can at least ask you, and they don't have to wonder the rest of their lives. Your estate plan is your final communication to your children or to your heirs. And that's the last thing they hear from you. And you want them to feel good about that. I have sat with men who run CEOs of billion-dollar companies who are crying because of the hurt that they experienced by the disparity in the gifts. And I tell them, well, your parents said, you're doing so great, you don't need as much. And he said, I'm so tired of being punished my whole life for doing well. My ne'er-do-well brother is coddled and cajoled. And he said that, this is such a fitting end to, this just sums up my whole life. And he literally was in therapy over this issue. A very strong, bright man. So it's just very impactful, and people don't realize the impact until you sit with the folks after the death.
I'm with you 100%. We're chatting with Dawn Hall Cunneen. She's the managing partner of Cunneen Booth LLP, expert in trust and wills. I'm Drew Schlosberg. As you're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, the nation's longest-running community podcast. We're now in our 19th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, doing great things in San Diego County for more than 6 decades. Food insecurity, literacy, arts, you name it. You're so spot on that. Again, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this because I was very fortunate. I think I might have mentioned this before. My mom was great. My dad passed away many years ago, in 1978, and I was young. And mom
very young,
lived,
yes.
And mom lived 32 great years with dad and 41 years after. And
Wow.
She was beautifully set up to put stuff in an estate plan and a will. Paul and I knew everything, and it was 50-50, and we didn't care if we got one penny. We wanted her to have a great life, and she did. But this is the way it should have been. She wanted to make life easy for us, and obviously when she passed at 95 years young, it was a piece of cake.
That's great.
Well, it just should be that way all the time. Do you, and I almost wish that there could be maybe I'll go into business with you and we can do a counseling service to parents to say, this is what you need to do, and we'll get you when you're young. You just delivered a baby? Okay, good. Now, what you need to do, I'm not sure if you have to have an estate plan today, but think about this baby you're raising. You want this person to have, no absolutely fears or trepidations when you pass away, which hopefully is in 60 years from now.
Right. Well, Well, it's so important, though, to have an estate plan from day one,
Yeah.
because when you're dealing with minor children as well, you don't want your assets to end up in a guardianship governed by the court just to get to the minor child. And sadly, young people do pass away. I had someone who went to the beach, got a staph infection, and passed away, had 2 little kids. Life is so unpredictable, and I hate to be the purveyor of doom, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but it's just adding an element of realism to your life and how you plan your life.
Yeah, I guess I look at it differently. It's you are doing something that is great for your kids or your loved ones or whoever they are, right? Whoever your heirs are going to be. This is the best gift you can give them without question. Am I being too dramatic on that?
No, you're not, because you cannot anticipate how traumatic a death will be. As bad as you think it will be when your spouse dies or if a child dies, multiply that by about 100.
Right.
So you don't want to add to that time of trauma, and it's always a trauma. I was shocked when my 95-year-old grandmother died, because the human soul isn't wired to let go of those you love. It's always a shock. It's always a trauma, even if it were expected rationally. So you don't want to add to that mix chaos and financial hardship and legal proceedings.
With you 100%. We come back from break, Dawn. Let's talk about the elements of an estate plan, okay? Why it's important to do this. And, other things that go into it. You need to know where your documents are located and all that business. And listen, is there any fee? Does it cost? Depends on who the different business is. But to come in and just get an estimate, can people come in and just say, I want to get an estate plan. Here's what I'm thinking of. Do they get charged for that? Or is that not until the actual plan is written?
Sure. So how we work is we'll have a 15-minute call. I'll just get a few details, and then I'll quote the hourly rate because we rate based on complexity of the estate, and then give you a ballpark of where it will be. And then if you want to go forward, we sign an engagement agreement and you come in.
No, that's good. When we come back from a breakdown, let's talk about that and the different elements of an estate plan when we return with Dawn Hall Cunneen. She is the managing partner of Cunneen Booth LLP. I'm Drew Schlosberg. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest running community podcast. We're in our 19th year. Brought to you by the good folk of Mission Fed Credit Union. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Back with a frequent guest on our show, Dawn Hall Cunneen. She is the managing partner of Cunneen Booth LLP, a trust and estates law firm. Cannot talk about how important it is to get those things done in order while you're alive, when you can sit down with your kids and do it. If you haven't done it, trust me, you will be thrilled that you did it, and so will your kids or your heirs or whomever else. What are the elements of an estate plan?
Sure. For most people, you have a revocable living trust, and that's an agreement you sign during your lifetime that has provisions that govern how your assets are managed while you're alive, whether you have capacity or incapacity, and then directs the distribution of the assets on your death. You will also have a pour-over will that just says, "Dear Judge, if I forgot to title an asset in my name as trustee, give it to the trustee of my trust." You never want to use that because then you're in probate, but it's there as a safety net. You'll have an advanced healthcare directive where you name an agent to make healthcare decisions for you when you're alive but can't communicate. And so people often think, oh, the agent only takes over if I'm out of it and I don't know what's going on. No, with stroke victims, they know what's going on. They just can't communicate. And other instances. So pick someone who makes healthcare decisions like you would, because you'll be aware of these in some situations.
Right.
You'll also have a durable power of attorney for asset management, which gives your agent control over non-trust assets like retirement accounts cannot be held by a trust. Public benefits like Social Security, dealing with tax issues, those types of things. And then there's a nomination of conservator of the person in a estate, letting a judge know if you need to be conserved by a court, which means all your rights are taken away and someone else is making all your decisions for you. You've identified who you want to be that decision maker.
Right, because we hear in the news about I didn't choose one or I didn't have one, which I'm sure 99% of the people don't, including me. And then all of a sudden now you're assigned some nefarious person. Maybe I'm watching too many movies or something like that. And you don't have a choice versus now you've said, hey, I want, my cousin Joe, who I'm very close to be my conservator, if indeed I get to that spot, correct?
Correct. And, you're not being dramatic because when people are completely out of it, they don't know what's going on, and someone has complete control of their person and all their wealth, it's a situation that's ripe for corruption.
Right. So now people say, listen, I think Dawn's a cool cat, and she is. I'm going to give her a call and have a 15-minute conversation. That's good. And she's quoted me as X based on what my assets are. I'm, relatively, I own a home and I have some things in IRAs, and for the most part, that's it. So it should be relatively straightforward. I imagine maybe there's nothing that's relatively straightforward.
I was going to say famous last word.
Right, exactly. Well, I'll find out when you look at mine. But, I think from that point forward, now that you come in, and you sit down and you go over these things and you're very thorough about, okay, this, and this is your area of expertise. There are probably 85 things they haven't thought of when you go over these. And then once that is set up, okay, it can be changed. They just have to call you. And it has to be changed legally, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
If you want to change your trust, you have to follow a very specific procedure to do that.
Right, exactly. You can't just sit there one day watching sports and go, I think I'm going to change this over here. Right.
Well, the worst thing people do is they'll cross things out and handwrite new things in. And, my goodness, those are the cases that end up in court and people are litigating over what was intended by these interlineations.
Right.
And are they binding or not?
Right. So,
and who made them?
Right. So go back to your trust attorney or whomever to do that. You'll be very grateful that you did. But once you do that, do you recommend, unless you have changes, that your world is changing every 5 seconds, if it's relatively the same, do you review it every 2 years, 5 years? Is there a time frame or just depends?
Sure. The review is driven by change in circumstances, births, deaths, right. Other health issues, changes in financial circumstances. But if you don't have those factors, which hopefully at some point we get to that point in life, right, where you're not always on the up and down roller coaster and life kind of becomes actually boring, which is great. No problems. And so in those situations, most people come back to us every 2 years because there's so many changes in the law all the time. And people usually will start, I don't think we have any changes. And by the end of the meeting, I'm on page 3 of the changes. So.
Right. Well, but that's why you got the expertise in this. It's something that someone think about. We talked about the Palisades fire, obviously horrific for many different reasons. And you had some clients that, you're certainly working with on that. And I think people don't, certainly, think about those things, even though if you live in Southern California or California, you better be thinking about these. No different than people that live in hurricane country or tornado alley. in this area. So that's why it's so important to digitize, right? Make sure that, especially the will and the all the things that come with an estate are digitized, and any important document.
Any important documents, because one of the problems we're having too is the elderly folks were still getting bank statements and they can't remember where all their accounts are. They don't have account numbers. So they're spending the last couple weeks just going from institution to institution to see if they still had an account there. And this is on top of a trauma of losing everything you own and barely escaping with your life. These people are exhausted.
Right.
And it's a horrible process. So even I've changed now how I do things because I do everything electronically. But I thought, well, gosh, if I lost everything and didn't have my passwords or phone because I have everything saved, in my auto save, so I don't know all my passwords. I actually printed out. I did the opposite. I printed out a copy of all my statements and put it in our fireproof safe so that I would have a copy of, where to start if I lost my phone and my computer with all my passwords saved in it.
Yeah. See, mine's in the cloud. So, where...
That's true. I guess mine is too.
Yeah, right.
I'm not very tech savvy, but it made me paranoid seeing what everybody's going through, just trying to find their accounts.
Well, listen, same thing, yeah. Passwords, and absolutely right. If your phone gets lost and you don't have it in the cloud, which you can always reclaim it from the cloud, then you're going to be in a big hurt because what do you have, like 4 billion passwords and so forth. We're chatting with Dawn Hall Cunneen. She is the managing partner of Cunneen Booth LLP, a trust and estates law firm. I'm Drew Schlosberg. Listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight in the Community Show, the nation's longest-running community podcast, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Doing great things for San Diegans for more than 6 decades. You brought up something early, and I think that is so spot on. You really are, well, I guess you couldn't be too young to put an estate together if you're 2 years old. But, if you're a young adult, especially if you have a family, if you're in their early 20s or not, you can't start too early to have an estate plan, correct?
That's correct, especially if you have minor children under the age of 18. You want your estate plan to spell out who do the children go live with, who manages the money for them, because they can't receive assets till they're at least 18 years old. So it's very important. I think sometimes it's even more important with younger folks just getting started that don't have a lot, because if you have a lot of money solves a lot of problems. People say it can't buy happiness. I disagree. It can buy happiness because it can solve problems, and that creates happiness. And so,
not everybody who has a lot of money is happy. That's where people get confused. But I agree with you. Money can't buy happiness, spoken by a billionaire. Okay, right, exactly. In this area. But, I think something else that you brought up in this example of this CEO runs a very successful company, just absolutely crushed when found out that the assets were, given in certain ways. If people don't think that, well, my family would never do stuff like that, okay, and we're just so tight-knit. Well, you may be, okay? But you don't know what circumstances are going to happen 5 years, 10 years down the road. And now, hey, I didn't realize you were interested in this, and now I'm going to go to court because you got, the Hank Aaron baseball card that I wanted or whatever. You see that, do you not?
Oh, we see that all the time. And whenever parents leave disproportionately to their children, that's always a problem. Mm-hmm. It really is. That just doesn't go well. It doesn't send a good message. And we recently met with a family who was doing that, and a condition of me being the attorney that drafted those documents were that both children had to sign off on the disparate distribution in writing, because I want to avoid litigation. And if you've signed off on it after full disclosure and acknowledgement of everything you've seen and done and heard, it's going to be harder to litigate that later.
So let me ask you, that's a good question. Dawn, I could talk to you for hours, and that'd be to the detriment of you. I'll tell you that right now. But so here is, you've got the estate plan, the documents, the will, power of attorney, health directive, and all that signed, and the person identifies a trustee, right, that will manage this thing, correct?
Correct.
And the trustee's only job, they can't alter it, they can't do anything but execute it. correct?
Correct.
So as much as you think the person didn't mean this is what they wrote, and that's not your job to decide what the person meant. It's on paper, correct?
That's right.
How can people then dispute it? Let's say the parents did not meet with the kids, and it's very, very, disparaging or disparate in the fact that Joe Blow gets 90% and Amy Blow gets 10%. That can't be. How can that be fought?
So there are a variety of bases for challenging a trust instrument. One is undue influence. In your fact pattern, that's what we most commonly see, is that people will say the person who got 90% coerced and unduly influenced my parents to make that disposition. That's the most common.
How do you prove that?
Undue influence, it's by a preponderance of the evidence, and you bring in witnesses that say they isolated the person, they cut the person off from all their friends and other family, they were gradually taking control of and stealing assets, and that's usually the fact pattern we see. It starts with isolation and then creating a dependence on the abuser.
Now, do you get involved in that as a lawyer?
We do. About half of our practice is trust and estates litigation.
Interesting.
Yeah, we primarily represent trustees defending the terms of the trust, or when beneficiaries sue the trustee because they allege the trustee mismanaged the trust. And we do, I have one that's almost a pro bono case now where I'm just helping at a very reduced rate, a fraction of our normal rate, because this poor family has been so abused by two trustees, and the estate has just been stolen from, because trusts are not court supervised. So you have to name a trustworthy person to be the trustee, because no one's looking over their shoulder, and you won't find out until the assets are gone.
Well, interesting. That brings up, there's just so much to unpack here. And so, what I'd love to do, we'll think about this. You can not try to break any privacy laws. That's not my goal, But seriously, I would love if you have a client, and they don't have to go into the details, that said, listen, this is why it is so important to have a trust. Then now you got someone who's, not that we don't trust you, but we do very much, no pun intended. But you have somebody that said, listen, I am so glad we did this for these reasons. You make the decision if you want to bring somebody in. They'll have to agree to do it,
Of course.
If they want. But I'm a big fan of, you shared this, we had a person that was a mediator. He happened to be a lawyer as well, but he mediates when people are getting divorced, all right? Actually, I think I had him on the air and was chatting with him, and I said, listen, not to break any laws, but if you have a client that said this was the way to do it, we saved zillions of dollars, we ended this thing amicably, and we didn't give $100,000 to lawyers. We did this for X.
You say that like that's a bad thing, Drew.
Well, but my point is there are clients that have just sort of so much benefited from your company deal, Anyway, think about it. You don't have to.
Of course, yes.
So that sounds good. Any final comments, Dawn?
No, I just think... make sure that you know where your documents are. Make sure you know who drafted them if they don't, and go get a copy of them, and make sure you have a digital copy, and make sure you have an asset list with account numbers, and just take care of yourself, because these situations are so traumatic. You don't want to add chaos to the trauma.
100%. How do they get a hold of you? What's the email, and if you want an email, what's your website?
Sure. My email is dhc@Cunneen, CUNNEENBOOTH.com. And the website is CunneenBooth.com.
Well, it's obviously, obviously, the content you provide is just so valuable. I can speak from experience. Having a trust is just such a relief. And when you finally do it, everybody I've talked to that has finally got their trust done, and just said, I feel great, and now just update it. So thank you. We know we'll have you back on somewhere down the road, because you really can't talk about this enough. Wishing you nothing but great success moving forward.
Thank you.
You bet. Chatting with Dawn Hall Cunneen. She is the managing partner for Cunneen Booth LLP, a law firm that really focuses on trusts and estates law. I'm Drew Schlosberg, as you're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest running community podcast, now in our 19th year. We hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.